proxies shoot into Saudi Arabia. Trump's not the problem. So here's the way this is headed. If they start enrichment at the levels they're talking about in a few days, Israel over time will have to respond. There's one nation on the planet that's not going to give the Iranians a pass on their nuclear program. That's Israel.
He's right, and Trump's decision to pull out of that deal that was crafted by Team Obama and Foreign Minister Javad Zarif's good friend John Kerry, it was a bad deal from the beginning. It was also a deal that was being violated from the beginning, as Tony Schaefer writes, retired senior intelligence op for U.S. Army, writes in The Hill. Even before he abandoned the agreement, Trump, Israeli intelligence proved that Iran was lying when it insisted that it only wants nuclear technology for energy production. And so Trump has been right, in my estimation, the estimation of many in the intel community, about Iran and their quest for nuclear weapons. We're certainly right about Iran propping up regimes from Damascus to Caracas, autocratic regimes. We're right about the attack on those ships in the Straits of Hormuz last week. We're right about shooting down a U.S. asset over international waters. And we're right to impose the sanctions that Trump imposed, which are doing material damage to the Iranian economy, projected, according to the IMF, International Monetary Fund, to contract by 6% this year after having contracted by 4% the previous year. Compare that to GDP growth of 4% in Iran in 2017 before Trump took office. So you could have a regime that is in serious trouble. The collapse may not be imminent, but as Michael Rubin opines in National Interest, we could be witnessing the death throes of the Islamic Republic. It's a perfect storm, and sanctions have hurt their economy. Tehran's hopes that European and Asian countries would ignore U.S. sanctions have fallen short, as businessmen calculate that they cannot risk U.S. penalties regardless of what their own governments wish. Really interesting times. So for all of the hysteria coming from the usual suspects as it pertains to anything Trump-related, like Chuck Schumer saying he's going to bumble us into war, there's not been much bumbling at all.
Well, they were supposed to have an early morning, a pre-dawn strike in Iran, and planes were in the air, ships were in position, but no missiles were fired because President Trump, according to the New York Times, said everyone should stand down.
Yeah, so perhaps it was a show of force, and as Lindsey Graham said, one more thing, and the rhetoric isn't going to be enough. For more on this topic and others, 2020 related, we're pleased to be joined by David Harsanyi, senior editor for TheFederalist.com, author of the book First Freedom: A Ride Through America's Enduring History with the Gun, From the Revolution to Today. David, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So, taking aside Trump's tweets and maybe some of his sort of off-the-cuff theorizing about why the drone was shot down, do you take the same position that I do? That, I mean, in terms of the substantive policy decisions made with respect to Iran, this administration has been on the mark.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Iran is the mullahs are lashing out right now. That's why this is happening. Their economy, inflation's out of control. The economy is in serious trouble. As you mentioned, other nations who are still in agreements with them are the businesses in those nations are scared that the United States will sanction them if they deal with Iran. So they're in huge trouble. But one thing you didn't mention, and you did mention quite a bit about Iran is our enemy, and not only have they basically taken part in almost every or propelling the problems in most every part of the Middle East, from Yemen to Lebanon to in Egypt and Israel and everywhere else. But they are responsible for the death of probably around 600 American servicemen over the last decade. That's an attack on the United States. So the idea that they accidentally shot down a drone, maybe that's true. And I think at least that Donald Trump leaked, or the administration leaked, that he had changed his mind. That just seems a bit contrived to me. I think they're just telling Iran that one more thing and you're in trouble, and that we're serious about it. And it tells me that it's working. Obviously, they're belligerent for a reason all of a sudden in this open way. They typically do it through proxies. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, I think it is working, and it's messy. Obviously, it's not going to be easy, but I think it's working.
Yeah, there is no easy answer. But why do you think President Trump called the stand down late last night? I mean, was it because of our allies? Was this because he had the planes and the aircraft in place? The ships in place to threaten them? Or what do you think it was?
It's just a complete guess, obviously. I mean, I think they speak to Iran through Oman, and Iran said, listen, that was an accident. We're sorry. Don't hurt us. I think Iran had been calibrating what they were doing with the tankers and everything else to do just enough to show their displeasure and to try to hurt our economy and to try to hurt Donald Trump politically, but not enough to actually have the U.S. respond militarily. I think shooting down a drone comes very close, and I think the next thing that happens, you're going to, at some point we have armed force. We sent the carrier there for a reason. I mean, I don't really understand. Is it just political theater? Are we going to ever respond? And one quick thing, though, everyone talks about Iraq whenever you talk about Iran. Just because Iraq didn't go as planned and wasn't a success in many ways doesn't mean that we can never defend ourselves or never do anything again with our military. It's just absurd.
Right. So this goes to an interesting piece that Peggy Noonan wrote in the Journal about her sister and her uncle helped her understand Trump's political appeal back in 2016, and she talked about their conversations, how they had like an immediate attraction to Trump for all kinds of reasons that we've all heard before that are not illegitimate, but they're descriptive. But we've heard them that, look, people out this country don't care about people like Peggy's sister and her uncle, and they're tired of it. And this guy was speaking the truth about both parties, and that was very attractive politically. But Noonan goes on to say this about Trump and Trump supporters now in present. It's a weakness of Trump supporters now that they still cannot take seriously the unreadiness of the White House for a sudden, immediate, and high-stakes crisis. They do not see the chaos and the lack of professionalism of the unstaffed government as a danger. It is a dreadful one. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Trump's style all the time, although sometimes I am, particularly when he's going after the left. But it's incidents like this, it's crises like this one with Iran that sort of give lie to what Peggy Noonan and a lot of sort of the establishment Republicans think about Trump and his management style and this administration. It may not be buttoned down like they're used to, but there's really not a lot of evidence, and this would be a counterexample, Iran, to suggest that they're unprepared, unready for sudden, immediate, high-stakes crises.
Right. I would say two things. One, obviously, when you have a president with a, let's say, mercurial disposition who will fire people who he doesn't like and it's hard to work for, that's not great. You want things staffed to higher up and all of that stuff. I agree that could be problematic. Two, though, is what do you think that the United States military forces are in chaos because they don't have someone at the tippy top? I mean, they know everything that's going on in Iran. They're dealing with Israel. They're dealing with other allies there. This is not, politics changes administrations, but you have a lot of professionals there for a very long time. And, I'm not talking about diplomatic corps, which I'm not crazy about, but actual military folks, and they know what's going on. It's ridiculous to think that they wouldn't be prepared for something like this. And obviously, as you mentioned, I think he's actually reacted in a way that I think almost any president probably would in this sort of situation.
And I think one of the points you make goes to this sort of silliness because of the way the media covers this. The president, whoever it is, forget Trump or whoever, the president is omnipotent and omniscient. Everything emanates from the president, flows from the president, and everybody's just standing around doing nothing until the president decides what we're going to do in Iran, what his formal Iranian policy is, rather than, as you say, having this professional staff at the State Department, in our armed forces, that have been preparing generation after generation, so that institutional knowledge continues to get passed on from administration to administration.
Well, I just would quickly say, and this goes to a problem in journalism, and I don't want to rip young people. I think there are plenty of good reporters out there, but sometimes I'm reading this and you feel like this person has only been paying attention maybe for 2-3 years. They don't, everything for them flows from the politics of presidential politics, and not, they don't have a broader context of what's been going on for a long time with Iran, with everything else. And, that I think is a problem in coverage. I don't know how you fix that. You used to have people on beats for, decades, and they knew what they were talking about. But now you have a lot of different sorts of, as the echo chamber proved, a different sort of reporting class.
So next week, 2 nights, 4 hours, so many candidates. It's the first Democratic presidential debate. What kind of tone do you think it's going to take?
It's the Bolsheviks against the Mensheviks. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you know what? I think it's actually going to be pretty entertaining, and I don't mind. I don't think it's as big a problem really as everyone makes out. It's still early. I know everyone's excited. I think it's going to be interesting to see what how far left they go, and or maybe other people will tack more to the center, just with an eye on the general. But I don't know. I think it'll be entertaining. And infuriating for people like me, but still, I don't think it's this. I don't think it's a circular firing squad or whatever they're talking about. I mean, this goes on a lot, and I think it'll be fine. We'll survive.
Do you think that Hunter Biden and his new wife will make their public debut?
I don't know. I hope so. Biden has a lot going on in that family.
Yeah, a lot going on. And what about, we were just talking about this before you came on, about Hunter Biden, and now ABC picking up the story that Peter Schweitzer really has written about extensively. Biden as vice president really acting apparently to serve the business interests of Hunter, both in Ukraine and China. Doesn't this smack of like Clinton Inc. redux, and isn't this going to be a problem for Joe in the primary?
Well, I think right now there's enough evidence for the Justice Department to start getting FISA warrants and starting a big investigation into what's exactly going on here. We need to know for the good of the country, right? So precedent is, and the Democrats have set this precedent, that it's okay to do that with a presidential candidate, and then we can move forward from there after we have a special counsel and spend 2 years of the Biden presidency talking about it.
I wanted to get your take on this, the Biden presidency. Yes, I wanted to get your take on this piece, because you just mentioned sort of the state of journalism. So I want to give you a chance to defend New York Times publisher Art Sulzberger, which I know you relish those opportunities. Earlier in the week, the issue of the New York Times reporting over the weekend about this cyber intelligence effort the U.S. has embarked upon to sort of defang Russians' ability to interfere cyberly in a cyber way with U.S. elections next year. Trump called the report treasonous, and then Sulzberger wrote this long op-ed saying that he crossed the line, calling the New York Times reporters treasonous, and so on and so forth. I mean, is this just a tempest in a teapot we should ignore, or is this something important about the state of journalism?
Well, I don't, obviously I'm really critical about the state of journalism. I think that the New York Times, for instance, is basically corrupt in the sense that they're not doing their jobs and all of that. I don't like some of the language Donald Trump uses when he accuses journalism, but it gets harder and harder for me to get annoyed by it when I see how they act. Treason, it used to mean something. Now we just throw it around all the time. I mean, let's be honest. The journalists have intimated that Donald Trump was a traitor for 2 years while pushing this collusion stuff. Yeah,
well, that's the whole thing, that the glass house problem that the D.C. press corps has. I wanted to get your take as well. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but Elizabeth Warren, going back to the Dem side, Elizabeth Warren bumping up in the polls just a little bit, and now Elizabeth Warren is Adlai Stevenson. Elizabeth Warren is the consensus compromise candidate. We haven't even had the first debate yet.
Yeah, I think they feel like Bernie's a little too far on the left. I don't think anyone, at least in the infrastructure of the media and all that stuff, likes likes Biden very much. So I think for them, Warren is the consensus choice, and I think it's a good observation.
Yeah, but yesterday she told the Washington Post, David Weigel, that she's open to the decriminalization of sex work.
Yeah, I think she's nuts.
She's out of her mind. She said,
I'm
open
as a
to
libertarian,
it.
I think maybe, there are some reasons why that might be okay, but, in the sense of we should talk about it, but I'm just saying as a political matter, I think that's crazy. Also, it's not something I don't think that she would be involved in at all. I mean, wouldn't that just be a state issue?
I mean, I love the idea. Yeah, she's definitely the consensus candidate, and she's nuts. Those two things are not mutually exclusive.
That is
far
crazy.
Left. Yeah, she's hard left in a statist in a way that no candidate would ever, American presidential candidate, if she were the Democratic nominee, has ever been. In a way, I think she's almost more statist than Bernie in many ways. So it's weird. She wants to legalize prostitution, but then control everything else you do in your life. So she's weird.
And she wants to eliminate student loan, which I know some friends that love her because of that.
Well, so does everybody else.
You can't eliminate loans. Someone is owed money, so basically you're just stealing from them, right? I mean, I don't really understand how this is supposed to work out.
Yeah, well, maybe Maxine Waters, since